This is the Let's Go Win podcast with your host, J.M. Ryerson.
What is happening, you guys? Welcome back to the Let's Go Win podcast. I'm really excited. This gentleman that is about to come on has helped a lot of really unique, interesting people, and he is definitely a professional at what he does. Henry Kaminski Jr. is the founder of Unique Designz, a full-service design, branding, and digital marketing agency that is dedicated to helping personality brands, coaches, consultants, influencers, speakers, and authors design, grow their brands, scale their profits, and increase their exposure online. He's the host of the popular Brand Doctors podcast and a self-taught graphic designer and brand consultant that has overcome all the odds to build a wildly successful multi-million-dollar business over the past 14 years. He has worked with a diverse range of business owners and professionals, including celebrities like Jon Bon Jovi and Fabio Viviani, as well as internet marketing expert Russell Brunson, who has named Henry the $1 Million Brander. My brother, you have been busy. How you doing, Henry?
What is going on, my dude? Thanks again for having me, man. How's Boca treating you?
Boca is amazing. I absolutely love it. I have so many of your neighbors that are becoming my neighbors, which is awesome. And next time you're down here, we got to connect. But brother, tell me, all right, so you're self-taught graphic design and brand consultant, yet you've worked that's three huge names, and I'm sure the list goes far past that. Tell me, give me the story, brother. How did this come about?
Man, you got 3 hours? No, I'm kidding. It's fairly simple. You know, when I was growing up, I always wanted the best because I grew up in a very humble household. My parents got divorced at an early age, and my father raised me on his own, working 4 jobs. And I saw how hard he worked, and I knew what it took to put food on the table, and clothes on my back. And so I was always striving to do right. So my work ethic came in very, very strong. Now, my father was very tight with his money. So he has the first quarter he ever made. My mother's brother, on the other hand, was living the lifestyles of the rich and famous. He runs and still runs after 50 something years, a very successful construction company. And so I was caught between these two lifestyles. I would go up to see Uncle Joe, and I would see that lifestyle. And then I would come back to where my father, with my father, and seeing what he was doing. And I was very torn. So I grew up a very insecure kid because I wanted the stuff, but I couldn't afford it. And I didn't have a lot of self-esteem. My father was very busy at work, and he did the best he can, right? He did the best he can. But like I said in my other interview, I had to learn a lot of things the hard way. And I got beat up pretty good, went through some serious traumas, and we don't need to get into that today, but that made me always not see myself as the man that I really was, or the kid that I really was. And so I would go into these holes because I was so afraid of what people thought of me or what people would think of me if I did these things. So I played it safe for a lot of years. And it wasn't until I got older, I realized, listen, I am here on borrowed time, because when my parents were trying to have a kid, they couldn't. It took them 16 years to finally have me. And then 2 years into my life, I almost died. So, I'm sitting here going, Jesus, I'm here on borrowed time. I got to make the best of it. And so that's where my work ethic came from. And so, yeah, I was working, I got out of college, and I was working this 9 to 5 at a local hospital. And they were kind of treating me, politics is a big thing up here in Jersey, and it could work for you or against you. And in this case, it worked for me to get the job. But once I got there, it worked against me because there were some people there that were a little resentful of who I was related to. So I wasn't really happy there, right? But I continued to to strive. So I got my master's degree in business management, and the hospital paid for 90% of that. And I always wanted to lead. I always wanted to help people. I always wanted to guide people. And I don't know where that came from. It's just something that was instilled in me at a young age. And I got this job as a special events director, assistant special events director for a sudden infant death syndrome. And if you don't know what that is, it's SIDS is when a baby dies under the age of 1 year old with no cause. So I was responsible for raising money for the department, but then taking that money and creating events for all the families in the state of New Jersey that lost the baby to SIDS. So I had to create these fundraising events, and I had to come up with this marketing material every time, 4 times a year. So I got Z100, one of the biggest radio stations on the planet, to sponsor me. And I knew I had to make that event like killer, right? So I went to my buddy who was in the club scene back in the day. Now, mind you, we're mid-20s of age. And I said, dude, I need marketing materials for this. We're going to do this at your club. Like, we need to make this thing look hot, right? So he sat me down on a Sunday morning and said, here, we're going to design these flyers for this event. And that's when I realized what graphic design was. And I go, I'm going to learn this. I'm going to figure this out, because this is just a really cool trade. And so I got my boss to buy the Photoshop program. And so not only was I doing all the work for the hospital, but I started my little side hustle. And then sooner than later, that side hustle was making me more money than a damn hospital was. And so I took off running. The hospital was making some changes and shaking some things up, and they were slowly kind of pushing me out the door, and they gave me some hints. And so I said, you know what? It's time to fly. And so my first year, I did like $250,000 in revenue just by myself, just grinding 20 hours a day, and gave me the confidence to push on. And so here I am 14 years later. Not to say that it was smooth and, roses and Range Rovers all the way through. I almost lost my business twice due to just poor decision-making and bad financial intelligence. And I realized that, like, everything that I have today could be taken tomorrow in a blink of an eye. So you better be grateful for it. You better cherish it, and you better create something that is worth it. It's worth it.
Ah, brother. I mean, it's an amazing story. I mean, I'm writing down notes and various things that you said. I mean, I heard dreams, I heard work ethic, but I loved, and not that we have to dive into the negative, but I love what you said, because we're going to talk about some of the awesome, pinnacles and the peaks. But I think some of the valleys are so important to talk about. You said maybe some poor financial decisions. Maybe I wasn't taking it, like the first time I made a lot of money. I took all that shit for granted, man. It was like, this is always going to be here, and we're always going to grow at 20%. How ludicrous that is to say now, but talk to me a little bit about that. Cause I think kids are, not necessarily kids, cause shoot, adults do it all the time, but people listening can learn from this, say, hey man, this can be taken from you, and you need to absolutely be grateful every single day and continue to keep the pedal down. Can you talk about that a little more, Henry?
Yeah, dude, absolutely. Like, it's funny. I mentioned before, like I would see my uncle, and he would have parties at his house, and there would be valet parking, like in his house. And I'd be like, what in the world? Like, this is unbelievable. So I made a promise to myself at a very young age. I think I was like 16 years old. And I said, when I get money, I am going to not live like a pauper, because my father had money. He did. But he never spent it. So, and I get it. I understand it. He grew up, like, he was born in 42. So, coming out of the Depression, like I get it. Right. So when I was growing up, I always felt like I was always behind. Like, even at like kindergarten, I remember my getting this story later in life, but my father said, your kindergarten teacher wanted to hold you back. And I told her to go screw herself, because I didn't think you had to be left back. But guess what? Maybe I did. But this was something that my father could not swallow, right? So I grew up sort of like that. Like, so what do I have to do to get ahead? Well, I need to show you how successful I am. Otherwise, I don't think you'll like me. And as crazy as that sounds, that was the story in my head. So when I started making money, I was buying frivolous stuff, just like anybody. They call it young money, right? Where we just go out and we show off because, my whole family worked for my uncle, and I had a little chip on my shoulder at the time. And I said, I want to be the one nephew that doesn't have to rely on the family money. And I did it. And I superseded that goal by so much. But what it did was it created a lot of resentment. With my friends, with my family. And that's something I wish I could take back. If I knew that it was going to cost me my family, I probably wouldn't have made some of those decisions. Right.
No, it makes sense, brother. And it's making me reflect back. And of course, you try not to live with regret, but I understand what you're saying. Mm-hmm. Talk to me. I'm going to put out, because you are the brand doctor, and I got to pick your brain on how important I say personal brand. And I mean, truly in the world we live in today, I don't know if there's a better pension program, if you do it right, that you can set up, brother. So you are helping people do this. You do it for yourself. Talk to me about, when I say personal brand, why is this so important? How can you do it, and do it in a way that monetize and continues to reward you? Yeah.
So a couple of things. Let's define branding first. So branding, the best definition I came across is the gut feeling people get when people interact with you, your product or service, right? So it's not what you think it is, it's what they feel it is, right? So you walk into a nice hotel we were talking about offline in West Palm, and you walk in and you feel like home. That's brand, right? That's brand. You feel like you're the only one staying there. That's brand, right? Personal branding, I heard this definition a while back, which I thought was very interesting. It's the cross section between who you think you are and how people perceive you. So the wider that gap, the more you're going to struggle. The smaller that gap, the more you're going to win. Right. And I love the podcast. Let's go win. Right. So I want to shorten that. I want to shorten that gap for people. So what I've been able to do, and I'll share you a fun story. So when I hit my plateau at year 5, I was a one-man band. So I was doing everything inside of my business. So I ran the business down to the ground because I was getting resentful of my life at the time. I was like, there's got to be more to this, but why am I still, I'm hustling, I'm struggling, but I'm spending every dollar I've made. Again, financially unintelligent. So I got to a point where I needed to get help. So I reached out to Russell Brunson, right? And he looks at my website. I had just spent $26,000 on this website. He looks at it and he says, dude, this website, it's not the website you see today, but he said, this website's gorgeous. Don't get me wrong. I mean, look, it belongs in a magazine, but where are you in this website? You don't exist. It's just all fancy footwork. It's all fancy work that you've done. Where are you? And I said, that's it. He goes, you got this big personality from Jersey, but it's nowhere to be found online. So I said, okay. So that triggered me to create my origin story, which is the one you see on my website now. And that video, I've done it over a couple of times to get it up to date. But that video has created so much connection and so much success for me as a person, but as a business as well. I can't begin to tell you. And it actually turned Russell into a client for 2.5 years, because he came to me and he said, I see what you're doing, and I cannot find a designer that gets my vision. That's why I have 6 of them right now, all doing work for me. And they're all coming back with different looks and feels. And I can't, I can't grow this business all fragmented. So he says, can you come in and streamline all of this? So I said, yeah, it's going to take some time though. So 2.5 years goes by and we finally delivered that consistency to the level where I basically, he had some in-house people coming in at that point. So I said, listen, I'm going to pass the baton to you guys and you guys can run with it. 6 months later, he hits 100 million in revenue. So there's something to be said about putting yourself out there consistently, not only from a look and feel, but from a messaging standpoint. And then the other thing was, we really helped ClickFunnels design the brand around who their ideal client was. And that's something that I really want to hit home today, is really understanding who it is that you want to serve. So for me personally, I don't know if I can necessarily serve a beginner with the level of work that I do. I typically work with entrepreneurs, solopreneurs that are year 5, looking to take things to the next level. Maybe it's time for a rebrand. Maybe they're out, their messaging is outdated, or they're getting into a new industry. I need help. I don't know what to do. I Fiverred my way up to this point. I need something more professional now, something more cohesive. Okay, let's have a conversation. So I know who I'm talking to because I was in that situation year 5 of my business, right? So I know what you're going through. You're going to need a team. You're not going to be able to do all this on your own. So that's where we come in and develop a really strong brand strategy, because this is where I got the brand doctor name from. I can't design you anything without thoroughly discovering what it is that you want to do and why you want to do it and who you're doing it for. So once I develop that discovery, now I know who I'm talking to, who I'm designing to. Because the biggest mistake we all make is we design our brands for us. And it's not for us. Like, I don't care that if I'm doing a logo for you, JM, and your wife says, I don't really like that typeface for that logo. Unless your wife is our ideal client, I don't care what she thinks. I love her to death, but I don't care. So you have to design the brand for them, not you. Because if they don't resonate with it, they don't connect with it, they're not going to buy from you.
Yeah, I want to talk about that discovery phase, because I think any entrepreneur, especially starting out, they may think, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. This is who I'm doing it for. This is but the truth is, so often, like you just said, they're thinking about themselves and not the end result. How do you get down to that, brother? Because I've been in many of these boardrooms doing the strategy session, trying to figure out, why are you doing this? And they're basic questions, but damn it, do we struggle with figuring out what these basic ideas are? How do you get down to it, man?
So it's deep work. It's a lot of asking the question, why, and one of the things is, what got you into this business in the first place? Right. And then what makes you so different than everybody else? And 9 times out of 10, JM, it's funny. Like, it comes down to such primal things, right? For example, the reason why I like premium things. Now, as I get older, it doesn't really faze me so much. Like, there's some things that I will not skimp on, right? I will not skimp on them. I will pay the highest price because I want that assurance of quality, right? So where does this come from? I'm using myself as a case study here. Where does this come from? Well, when you grew up borderline poor again, right? And you're getting your clothes from Canal Street, Chinatown in New York City. You're getting your school clothes from there. You have family members telling other family members that you look homeless. What's Henry's father doing down there in South Jersey with this kid? Last time he came up to visit, he looked like a homeless kid, and you hear that through the grapevine. That runs really, really deep, right? And that's what made me say, you know what? I want the best moving forward, or I want nothing at all. And that's why I have the camera set up that we're running this podcast off of right now. This is why I pay my team a rate, and I don't go the cheap route when I'm bringing on team members, because I want the best, or I don't want it at all, because that's what I went through as a kid. So you might be saying to yourself, Henry, come on, bro, you're 40 years old. Get over it. Listen, you're right. I should get over it, shouldn't I? But maybe I shouldn't, because it was that then that gave me the drive to get here. So why would I give that up?
I mean, look, you see it in artists and athletes, those that have that, whether it's chip on the shoulder or whatever they've taken with them, where they came from. That's longevity. Let's just be clear. Look, the moment you buy into your own press, you might be done immediately. I want to talk about something, because there's an interesting topic, and where you have a lot of followers, but that doesn't necessarily mean you are making revenue, right? And I'm not hurting, TikTok is not what I'm here to beat on, but you see people with 5 million views on TikTok, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're monetizing anything. Some are, but not everyone is. Can you talk about that, and maybe some ways that people can leverage taking their followers and making them into clients, i.e. profitability and monetization?
Yeah, that's a great point. And we're going to do like a little mini course here for you guys. So I've grown my Instagram account pretty large. It's not large compared to some people, but pretty large. 150,000, 149,000 followers, right? Instagram is one of my biggest revenue streams. It's one of my biggest platforms that I'm on, right? One of the things that I never took for granted when I was building that Instagram account was thinking that my audience knew what to do next after they hit my Instagram account. So that's where the word funnel works. And this is how you create this. So there's a few things. Now, it's 2021, guys. It's a lot harder to build a business today, in my opinion, on some levels than it was 14 years ago, because there wasn't the noise that there is today, right? Not everybody's back then, not everybody was an expert. Now anybody with a microphone and the camera is an expert. So how the hell do you break through all of that? So that's where you have to create that likability, that trust, the credibility, the authority. So let's talk about content real quick, and then we'll get into funnels. So you want to break down your content strategy into 4 categories, right? And the 4 categories, one being personal. You want to show the personal side of who you are, right? Look at the way The Rock does it on his Instagram. It's phenomenal, right? The second, and the second, third, and fourth pillars are, one should be FAQs. What are the common questions that your clients or audience asks you? That should be a piece of content. The other one is objections. What kind of objections do you get on a regular basis that you can kibosh through your content? So now you have a YouTube channel or a LinkedIn or an Instagram account that is like a resource guide for people. That's huge. So now they're picking up what you're throwing down. They're liking what you're saying. It's music to their ears. You're speaking their language. Now what, right? For example, I had a client last year came to me and said, I got this podcast. It's kicking ass, but I don't know what to do with my listeners. I need a funnel, right? And then I said, okay, well, who's your people? He said, private equity guys, like Bobby Axelrod on Billions. And then I have my 6-figure entrepreneurs that want to scale and exit. Well, those are two very different people. How is one funnel going to solve that problem for you? You need two. You actually need two separate channels, one for Bobby and one for this other guy. So we realized that, and he said, whoa, okay, I see where you're going with this. We need to build out this strategy before we actually could get people in. I said, yes. So we helped them rebrand, and we helped them brand two very specific programs for two very specific people. 3 weeks after we launched, he got his first $96,000 client because the process was there. The customer journey was there for that person. So what happened was that person came in through that channel or that highway, AKA funnel, and he knew exactly what to do first, second, and third. Bobby knew not to go down that road because that's not Bobby's road. That's not Bobby's path. He's past that. He's looking to grow his portfolio. So when you hit my client's website, you had two roads to go to choose instead of just one. And that's where I see a lot of people making the mistake. They build this website they try to please everybody, and they wind up getting no leads because nobody can qualify themselves, right? The visitors can't qualify and say, yeah, that's me, right? So the next step is to actually build that funnel. So I work with a lot of coaches, consultants, and the biggest thing that I tell them to do is you got to create some sort of masterclass or some sort of digestible content. It could be audio, it could be video. Know your audience, know what they like to consume. I know my audience loves video, right? So I put together a little 20-minute masterclass on what the top 5 entrepreneurs are doing to scale to that 7-figure mark, right? And I also share in that masterclass what they're not doing. And I get a lot of response where like, yeah, I go through that masterclass, Henry, and I realize I'm doing all these things that you say I shouldn't be doing. And I'm like, that's the point. Because I was doing that stuff too, and I was doing it for too long. So now you got them to a spot that you want them to consume, right? So now they're consuming your information. You gave them some value. You gave them some good tips because you know what their pains are. You know what they're trying to do. Now what? Well, you got to sell them something. Like you just got to, and you don't have to be salesy about it. I say in my masterclass, listen, now that you know this, the next logical step is to do this. We need to do, before I can tell you anything about your business, we need to sit down and assess what's going on. Because how credible are you going to deem me if you walked into my office, I asked you 0 questions, and I said to you, you know what? You need a rebrand and it's 50 grand. You'd be like, you didn't even ask me who my clients are. How do you know? Like, look in the real life situation, the personal situation. You get a bump, you go to the doctor. Doctor says, we got to amputate your leg. It's cancer. How do you know? You're going to trust that doctor to take your leg? No, you're probably going to get a second or third opinion. But what about the times where you went into that doctor's office and they asked you dozens of questions, and at the end they said, you know what? I think it's this. Sometimes it's good news, sometimes it's bad news. How much more comfortable do you feel with that doctor, right? So that's what we do. So the second phase is the assessment phase. So that's not free. That's not free. I charge for that because that's time, and you're going to get a lot of insight out of that call. At the end of that call, you're going to know what you should be doing and what you shouldn't be doing, whether it's doing it with me or not, but at least you'll have the insight. Then from there, you move them on to your core offer, your main product of service or whatever that is, right? So you see how I'm stacking that customer journey, but I'm raising the bar of value every time they go deeper. That's what you need to be doing for yourself and your business, is creating that value up front in your content, telling them what to do first, second, and third, and moving them down the journey. So say they're stuck between masterclass and assessment. Well, that's where more content needs to go out. That's where emails need to be sent. That's where podcasts need to be created so that people can really get a sense of to know whether or not you know what the hell you're talking about. And eventually they're going to hire you. So you got to understand that if you're selling something that's high ticket, unless you're Russell Brunson, right, you're going to have to nurture these folks. Like my sales cycle is like 4 months. I know that. Sometimes it's longer. So plan accordingly. Plan accordingly.
That's really interesting because you make it sound so easy, and truly you do. You break it down in a very basic manner and you say this, and it all sounds logical. I will tell you that so often when I'm talking to, I don't know, 30 to 50-year-olds, we talk frequently about, okay, I don't get the guy on YouTube, Ryan's Toys. I don't even know the name of it, but that kid's crushing like $10 million plus a year. And I've watched it and I don't get it. Look, Ryan, I don't know you. I'm sure it's awesome. I don't get it. There's another show. And so frequently in these conversations, and I'm asking you because you probably do know,
yeah,
we're going, what in the hell? Because you're right. It can be harder to build a business, but so frequently, like my son loves Mr. Beast. I mean, loves this guy. But I'm like, I'm watching it and I'm like, this is stupid.
Yeah.
But he's crushing it. So I guess what I'm saying is for those of us generationally that haven't adapted, perhaps, how do we get on board, man, to say, all right, look, this isn't the dinosaur. You gotta evolve, man. Otherwise you're going to get left behind. Or what did they do right? Because it seems like there's something that many of us don't quite get.
Oh man, that's a great question. I'm actually kind of going through that right now. You know, I turned 40 last year, 41 in 3 days. And I realized that like, I'm never going to be the guy that goes on Instagram and creates reels that point at text and, you know, and I'm never going to make a parody out of myself because that's just not who I am. Right. So here's a couple of things that I do. Right. And I can't speak for everybody, but here's what I do. I hire what I call my board of directors, and I got a few of them. I have my mindset coach who keeps me positive, keeps me focused. Right. I have my business mentor who does exactly what I do, but been doing it for 30 years. Right. I've been doing it for 15. So I'm going to bring him on board because he's going to guide the way, right? But when you get to this generational stuff, right? I actually have, I call him a trainer for social media. And he's 26 years old. And what he does is he helps me keep a pulse on that generation, because let's face it, that generation is going to be our clients next 5 years, if not sooner, right? So I have him on board because he's my eyes and ears. He's going to be a client soon. So he teaches me what resonates, what doesn't resonate. Now, he's never once say to me, you have to do this type of content. But what he is saying to me is my generation cares much more about who you are as a person, what you stand for, versus what our generation cares about. You know, our generation, you know, could be, we're looking for the best quality for the best price.
And what
right?
value you bringing, right? I've said that so many times.
All right. Where these kids will pay a fortune with time, money, and attention because they just like you. It sounds crazy, but they like what you stand for. They like what your purpose is and your mission is. And they're on board for the long haul. I mean, this is why the Kardashians have such a huge following. This is why, you know, just name the reality personalities out there that have these huge followings. People are just bought in to their culture, their personal culture. So I always tell people, like, you really need to pay attention these days on what your values are. And are you showcasing and demonstrating them, not only with what you say, but what you do, right? Because I can talk a big game here on this podcast, but if you went to my website and it looked like I put it together with toothpicks, would you believe me? And that's where a lot of my clients go wrong. I shouldn't say go wrong. They're a wealth of information. They are a true expert at what they do, but their representation online does not portray that. And the true value that they represent is being lost. And that, for me, is a sin. So that's where I'm trying to help people understand, like, the quality of your brand is going to determine the quality of your client, and the quality of your client is truly going to determine the quality of your life. So my question to everybody is, how much are you giving to your brand? Are you giving it the right nutrients it needs, or are you giving it snacks, right? Like, are you feeding it Oreos, or are you feeding it veggie chips, right? It's a silly, but you get what I'm saying, right? Are you giving it Fiverr Oreos, or are you giving it veggie chips? Hiring a specialist in design or hiring a specialist in social media, right? And paying that extra buck, right? So that's my question, because here's the thing. 14 years of business, ups and downs, great years, bad years. Those bad years, JM, if I had to do an analysis of why those years were low, is because I got too cocky and thought I didn't need it. So I didn't give.
Well, and I want to break this down because you were talking about a personal board of directors. The moment you said board of directors, I was like, oh, he's talking about his business. But then you went to a personal board of directors. This is so fascinating because you're talking about various coaches or mentors or experts for yourself to stay relevant, to know that I don't know it all, right? That's what I heard in that. And I hope everybody picked that up because it's never been said on this show like that. And that's really, really interesting, brother.
Yeah. I run my personal brand like a business. So if your business is going to need a board, like, I mean, I've gotten to the point where without them, I would not be able to do this. I really wouldn't, from a mindset, personal development standpoint, and from an execution standpoint. Like, what I'll never forget it. And this guy's $1,000 an hour, and I just pay it because it's worth every penny. I wasn't having a good day. We're on a call, and I was just, woe is me. Why am I doing this? I shouldn't be doing this anymore. And he said, let's just take a step back for a second, Henry. He said, Henry, I see you on social media. I see you online. And sorry, a little guy in the back here. He says, I see you online. He says, not only do you kind of look like Pitbull, the musician, he's like, but you kind of live his life without performing in stadiums. He says, what more do you want? He said, from the outside looking in, looks like you have everything you could ever ask for, like under your nose. Yet you're looking through a lens that nothing is enough. And he said, that's a really tough life to uphold. And that just hit me. And he said, Henry, everything that you want and need are inside of you already. It's your responsibility to pull it out. And I lost it. It was exactly what I needed to hear from who I needed to hear it from when I needed to hear it. And I got completely humbled. And I just sat. And after that call, I just sat here and I just thought about things. And I said, man, you drive cars that people would die for. You live in a house that people would die for, that will never see this. We had cousins from Colombia come up, and they came here and they said, this is a mansion. And I don't live in a super big house, but compared to what they were living in, they never saw a house of this magnitude. And it just goes to show like how much we take for granted. Right. And so I just said to myself, you know what? It's not about the stuff anymore. It's not about that. It's what drives you, right? What drives you? What makes you you? And why do you do what you do? Why are you buying the car? Is it because you really like the car, or is it a status play? Right? Like and if it's a status play, if you want to show everybody that you drive a Range Rover, fine, just own it. So when somebody says, why do you have a Range Rover? Because like you want to show people you got money? Yeah, I work hard. So if I could afford it, I'm going to drive one. Oh, okay. And it's it. That's it. Like you can't troll on that. So I just want people to like own themselves. I think that's what's going to be the key to your success.
No, I love what you said. And look, you can't look in the mirror and know exactly what you need. That's where your mindset coach comes in. That's where your mentor that has done it for so long, that's saying, hey man, you're missing this. Having that perspective is so important. Brother, I'm looking at the time and it's just flying by. I'm just going to give you a kind of open form. Anything I didn't ask you that you're like, man, I got to leave these guys with this. If there's something I didn't ask you that you're like, JM, you should have known better, this is what I got to leave your audience with.
Well, I promise myself every time I do an interview, I always will share why I do what I do. And I poured a lot into this today, but there's one big thing that I never mentioned yet. And you got to understand, like, so ironically, when we never wanted to have children, my wife and I, when we got married. So we went 6 years, no children, lived high on the hog. Then we got our dog, and people saw how we cared for this dog, and they were like, why do you not have children? And I didn't have the confidence to be a dad, because I said, I will never be the dad that my dad was to me. So I'm not even going to try. Right. And that's what I said. And then again, I had a coach that said, no way, what story are you telling yourself? Because you would be the best dad in the world. So I started to get this confidence up. Now, my wife and I start to try to have a family, and we can't, just like my parents. So 2.5 years go by, we finally go the IVF route, and boom, this beautiful, beautiful human being is on this earth now. And he's 4 years old now. Like, I feel like he was born 4 days ago. That's how fast it goes, right? So I said, I didn't have social media growing up. My father couldn't do a podcast and leave hints in the podcast on how to be a strong man or to be the person that you want to be. So every piece of content, including this one, I dedicate to my son, because there's going to come a time where he's going to say, what the hell does daddy do? And he's going to go and he's going to Google my name, and he's going to see shit tons of content. And he's going to say, oh, let's pick this one. And in that content is going to be a clue for him. It's going to be a stepping stone. It's going to be a breadcrumb that teaches him how to be the man that he wants to be. Not what I want him to be, what he wants to be. And that's what I do it for. And it's a beautiful thing, because I'm helping other people at the same time. So so when I'm helping your audience and you today, I know I'm helping him. And so that's what drives me. So I want everybody to be clear today, to not be afraid to share with people why you do what you do, because this next generation of client really cares about that. And so I want you to share it, and don't be afraid. People are going to judge you. People are going to call you full of shit. People are going to say what they're going to say. None of that matters. You know what matters most? What you say to yourself.
That's great advice, brother. And anybody can get behind that. I mean, my goodness, that is powerful. And I'll tell you off camera why I do what I do. And it's very similar, brother. So I love that. Where can our audience connect with you online, find you? I know it's probably going to be easy, but where can they find you, Henry?
Yeah, super simple. So if you just go to Unique Designz with a Z at the end, not an S, .net, you'll get access to subscribing to my YouTube, subscribing to my Instagram, check out that masterclass. It's 100% free. And you'll get access to a ton of content on that website that it's going to help you really build a brand around yourself that you're going to be super proud of.
Brother, I appreciate all the nuggets you shared today, your story. It's inspiring. And yet at the same time, it's real, it's authentic, brother. So I just appreciate it. And thank you so much for being here and taking the time.
Thank you, JM. Appreciate you, man.
I appreciate you. You guys, I mean, look, he literally broke down how he got into what he's doing, working with some very high level. I mean, shoot, Russell Brunson, there's not much small. It's a huge name out there. So he definitely knows what he's talking about. Go check out his stuff. If you are struggling building your content, getting your brand out there, you definitely have a good tool, whether he is the right guy or not. He even said, I'll give you the roadmap, whether you use me or not. That's pretty amazing. And until next time, you guys, I want you to continue transcending life. And remember, your mindset matters. We'll talk to you then. Thank you so much for listening. If this content is delivering value to you, please make sure to subscribe, rate, and review us. That helps us build this community, and that is what we are all about. Building this community as big as we can, helping as many people as we can, and deliver as much value as possible. Be sure to head over to letsgowinpodcast.com for information on my coaching courses, and make sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn at Let's Go Win 365. Let's go win and transcend in life.
This is the Let's Go Win podcast with your host, J.M. Ryerson.